Singing Dutchman Productions. Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends old and new and have honest conversations. Today I welcome Ashley Snyder to the front porch, one of my newer friends through many different connections. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Ashley, welcome to the front porch.
Thank you.
Hey, it's so great to have you here, and I can't wait to dive into the conversation. I have some questions that I've been thinking about for a while that I've always wanted to ask you, and I just never had the opportunity to talk to you about some things, so I'm really excited to be able to do that today. But I always start every episode off kind of in the same way, to kind of introduce you to the audience. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, maybe a little bit about your childhood. Did you have brothers and sisters? What kind of things were you interested in as a kid?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Western Berks County in Pennsylvania, somewhere between Sinking Spring and Wernersville. um, so very traditionally Pennsylvania Dutch area. And I have, let's see, I should have thought about this before you asked me, but I didn't come prepared. But I have three siblings. So two who are much older than me and one who's only 3 years younger. So I'm kind of in the middle, but I was the oldest one in the household when we grew up. I teach German now at the high school I graduated from, which is kind of cool. There are a lot of us alumni in that building, so that's really cool.
So that kind of is a great segue. You're a German teacher right now. So did you start learning German in middle school, or how did Conrad Weiser, because that's where you were, Conrad Weiser School District, how did they how was foreign languages approached there?
Well, things have changed since, but when I was in school, our junior high and our high school were in the same building at the time. Now it's separate. We have a middle school and a separate building for our high school. That changed actually while I was a student there, but in eighth grade, they gave us a marking period of each of the three languages that the high school offers. And it makes sense, I promise. We had block scheduling then, and we do now. So it's a little weird. You only have your classes for half a year and then you switch. And then there's three like marking periods or grading periods that break that up. So that was how they split up the exploratory languages. And so German was the first exploratory language I took, and I fell in love with it right away. Just because
Was it the teacher or was it the language, do you think? Or maybe a combination of both?
it was definitely both. It was definitely both. My teacher was wonderful. Frau Gerhardt, I had her all through high school. She's a pretty big reason for why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So she was definitely part of it. The other part of it was that I knew I had a very strong German heritage and strong Pennsylvania German heritage. Like, I knew it all came from there. And I thought, oh, how cool would it be to finally be able to speak the language of my people? And I don't know, it was kind of like, I don't know, it helped me find myself, sort of. I don't know how to explain that or to articulate that, but that's sort of what it felt like.
I have to put you on the spot and ask you to at least try to articulate that idea, because that is a powerful statement. I think there's been a lot of episodes of the podcast here where I've talked to people that have talked about cultural identity and Pennsylvania Dutch in particular. And everybody kind of has their own story. But what was it about that really made you, come to this conclusion? Not every high school kid is going to think about those types of things.
I don't know. I've been told I'm an old soul, and so I think of things this way, and I guess I'm not normal. I don't know.
Well, can I ask you this? Growing up, what role did Pennsylvania Dutch play in your childhood? Were you around, like, did your grandparents speak it, and were you around them a lot? Or what was the interaction as a kid to our language and our culture?
I honestly really didn't have a lot, which is interesting. There's only two people, well, one person, I should say, that I was actually around and heard speak Pennsylvania Dutch, and that was my great grandmother, and we called her Memmy, which makes total sense. She used to speak Pennsylvania Dutch just here and there, mostly when she was older. And unfortunately, it was more of a result of dementia. Like she would go into Pennsylvania Dutch and forget which language she was speaking. That was her first language. And we'd be visiting and I would just be a kid, but it breaks my heart to say this, but we used to have to tell her, Memmy, you're talking Dutch again. You got to talk English. And because we didn't understand her. And I think about that a lot actually now that we're fast forwarding quite a bit, but I've learned enough Pennsylvania Dutch that I would be able to understand her and speak back now and not have to tell her that. um, so I'm just like, oh, if only I was born like, a few generations before I was actually born. That'd be great.
That's that old soul of yours coming back, I
Maybe.
guess.
Maybe.
We'll come back to the Pennsylvania Dutch stuff because I have some other questions for you. But let's move forward a little bit. So you decided to go to college to study German ed. Was that your?
Uh-huh. Well, it was a process. I thought that's what I was going to do. I graduated high school and I was like, I'm going to teach German. This is going to be amazing. I got to college and I was like, do I really want to do this? So I actually started undeclared. I didn't have a major for a little while. And then I got really into psychology. So I was a psych major for a while. And then I took German again at the college level. I took a placement test and placed, I think, in level 4 or something like that. And so finally was back in a class again. I think I was like maybe 2 or 3 years in between. And it came flooding back to me how much I love it. And I thought, why did I ever think I was meant to do anything else? Like I just knew. It was like the heavens opened up and they were like, you are Frau Snyder and this is who you need to be.
That's great. It was your calling, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
So you graduated from college, and at some point, and this I was curious about this. Correct me if I'm wrong. You went to Germany, but you didn't go like in a traditional study abroad type way, correct?
Correct.
So tell us about that experience.
Well, I actually, this happened because of my Pennsylvania German professor. I got to give him credit. He knew about this program or this organization. And one day we took a break. We had Pennsylvania German. It was a night class once a week. And fun fact, I was in the very first group of students who took the course that Kutztown University offered when they first started offering it. So I was in class with people like Dale Schwoyer and Patrick Dunmoyer and like a bunch of people who are still pretty active in the PA Dutch community. But we were taking a break one night and Ed Quinter was the professor then. And I think just airing frustrations. Like I was just frustrated because I felt like I had learned so much German, but it felt like I hit a wall. That was the best way to explain it. I hit a wall. There's no way I could possibly get better at this. Like this is it until I go there. And I knew that. But the problem I was having at the time, KU had, I think they still have it as a study abroad type of option, but they only had like a 3-week type of program in Germany and Austria. And I mean, it still counted for credit and everything, but I couldn't afford to do it. And that was my main struggle. I was like, I can't afford to do that. I need to, but I can't, like, I don't know a way around it. And I was talking to him about it one night and he said, well, there's this organization that has a house in Germany. It's the Pastorius Home Association. And, they take interns. And I was like, ooh, tell me more. So he told me about it and I applied for it and they were like, yeah, let's do this. And I ended up earning a scholarship to pay for the tuition credit. So it kind of worked like a study abroad, but without actually doing it that way. And the house in Germany is kind of like a bed and breakfast, like eine Pension type of place. Hopefully that made sense to anybody who's listening. But so my job was to help answer the phones, handle reservations. I would help clean rooms after people were finished with their stay, and I would help prepare breakfast and do things like that. And it was awesome because not only did I get to be there for almost 3 months instead of only 3 weeks, which was my option at the time, I also had tons of time on my hands. Like I met people in town. My neighbor was the sweetest person in the world. He showed me all kinds of cool stuff. He gave me all this great, local like insider knowledge about places I was visiting on my days off or when I had a few hours to spare. And it changed my life. And anybody who's ever been to another country for an extended period of time will tell you that it's going to change your life. It's amazing. So, yeah.
For the listeners, Daniel Pastorius, who's the house, I mean, I guess most Americans have no idea who he is, but I mean, he's an important guy. If you could give the quick, like 1 minute speech, who was Daniel Pastorius?
So my brain thinks he's Franz Daniel Pastorius. But yeah, I have to think of him auf Deutsch, Um, he led the very first group of who we consider Pennsylvania Germans or our Pennsylvania German ancestors to present day Philadelphia. And he also founded Germantown. And well, it's just a section of Philly now, but it was kind of its own little place at the time. He did some pretty cool stuff. He even wrote like anti-slavery papers and things like that. And I mean, they came over here in 1683. So this is like way before, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but way before it was like cool to do that. He was already doing this. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so the house in Germany, was this his original home that has
It
now
was
become?
it was only his home, I think. I don't remember the exact number of years, but it was his adolescent home. So he didn't live there his whole life. He wasn't born in the house or anything, but he did live there. And it's so cool. Oh, the house was built, I forget the exact year, but it was built in the 1500s. And you still have like when you go in, you can see the cross timber, and even inside you can see it. And the wooden beams are, you can see that. And oh, it's like taking a walk, like a step in time, back in time. But you're in Germany, but it's also like, am I in a fairy tale? Because this house looks like that's where I should be.
I'll definitely in the show notes I'll put a link to the Pastorius House's website and people can check it out. I often tell people too, like if they're planning a trip to Europe, I find in Germany in particular, these little pensionen, these little bed and breakfasts or mom and pop hotels are the hidden gems of Germany for sure. I've never stayed in a chain hotel in all of my travels to Germany, and I refuse to because these places like what you experience, and because you lived it for 3 months, are you get such a cultural experience as a tourist, and then you had the opportunity to see it from the other side of the wall as well as, yes, you were a tourist, so to speak, but you also were completely immersed as well, in the culture, in the language every day for 3 months. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And it was great. I also, talking on the phone was the worst thing. I don't even know if I could do that now. Not without being there for a couple days first. But the one thing that was really cool were just the everyday experiences of people who live in Germany. Like I had to go to the grocery store sometimes and I had to pick up things. I had to take the recycling to the container and, in the center of town. And like it wasn't even just traveling and navigating like the train system and things like that. Like all those little everyday things I got to experience firsthand. And not that you wouldn't in a study abroad program, but I feel like just because it was completely different, I was living in and running like a house. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So you come home from Germany and eventually you find your way into a classroom at Conrad Weiser High School. Let's talk briefly about, what that has been like. So how long have you been teaching now?
Oh, this is my 11th year already.
Do you feel old?
Kind of. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's weird when people ask me that because I'm like, there's no way it's been that long. It doesn't feel that long. Maybe 5 years. I can see that, but
Yeah, I hear you. I know. This is my 20th year and I feel the same way. I'm like, there's no way I've been teaching for 20 years. But I guess one question it's tough because as you know, I teach high school German too, and
Mhm.
there's all these things I think about that it's like we're this not select, but we're a small club. There's not a lot of German teachers and German programs left in America, sadly. But both you and I are lucky enough to have schools that support languages, and we're able to do what we love to do. So let me ask you a couple questions in regards to your job.
Okay.
Question number one: the kids that you're getting. So is foreign language or world languages, is that completely voluntary at Conrad Weiser, or is there some kind of like everybody has to take a year of foreign language? How does your school handle that?
Well, it's voluntary, but it's not at the same time. So it's not required to take a world language to graduate, but they do. Most kids, they treat it like it is a requirement, and they try to have kids take at least 2 years worth of a language before they graduate. And I think most of that is just because a lot of 4-year schools like to see that, or like it kind of gives them a leg up on their language requirements later. They can take placement tests and maybe eventually get a little more out of it that way too.
Why are most of the kids that you have taking German over Spanish, for example?
Well, right now, I mentioned how things have changed since I was a student there. So now our middle school, which is 5 through 8, does offer exploratory, but only in Spanish. We do not have all three languages there. So Conrad Weiser offers, in the high school, we offer German, Spanish, and Latin. But the students are not exposed to German or Latin until they get to high school and decide to take one. And it's really funny. I have some kids who take both.
Time out. Conrad Weiser still has a Latin program?
Yeah, and it's very strong. They're rocking it.
What? How old is the Latin teacher?
Well, the Latin teacher who had been there pretty much since forever just retired a couple of years ago. So we have a much younger person in the position right now, and this is, I think, his third year. The poor guy started when like the year COVID blew up. This is like his first year of teaching, and he's still there. So I'm like, listen, if he can survive this, he's good to go.
That truly blows my mind because I know of there's hardly any schools that have Latin anymore. Holy cow. I had no idea that Conrad Weiser had Latin. Okay, sorry. Back to my original question. So why are kids wow, why are kids taking German?
So a lot of them tell me because they know same thing as I did. Like they know they have some kind of German heritage and want to learn more about it. Some kids just want to change because they had Spanish in middle school, but didn't get to try anything else. So they wanted to see what it was like. Those are most of the answers that I get. And every once in a great while, I have a student say, "Oh, well, I have an aunt and uncle in Germany and I want to learn it so I can go there and visit and not have to speak English," or, things like that. But yeah, I mean, you would think in that area, you'd have a lot of people with German and Pennsylvania German heritage. And by the way, I try to bring in as much Pennsylvania German stuff as I can. I sneak it in wherever I can.
So, yeah, okay. I was going to ask about this
Yeah.
because you and I are unique in the situation that not every German teacher in America or in Pennsylvania has knowledge of Pennsylvania Dutch, Pennsylvania German, either language or culture. And we're in a unique position that we can sprinkle that into our curriculum. And I often get asked by people, why aren't you doing more Pennsylvania Dutch stuff in your classroom? And we have to remind people, well, there's all these like rules and regulations that we have to
Mhm.
follow that, the state says you have to do X, Y, Z. So how do you work Pennsylvania Dutch into your classrooms?
Well, it depends. A lot of times when we talk about cultural things, it's really easy to loop it in because they can make direct connections between certain traditions here and there because a lot of them are very similar, especially around holidays and things like that. So that's an easy way to kind of link it. If there's something that's a little more Pennsylvania Dutch, well, then I'll talk about that a little bit and just be like, oh, well, this is something that developed here, but out of this idea that you're learning about in Germany. And also sometimes with grammar, I don't know if this happens to you, but like I actually feel really lucky that I teach in the middle of like the Pennsylvania German region because sometimes, well, I was just teaching the other week the phrase es gibt in German, which literally translates to "it gives," but they use it not well. I mean, if you know what that means, it works. But like, it's kind of like saying, "Well, there is this. I skipped whatever it is." And I was telling my kids, I was like, "Well, if you ever hear anybody say, like, for example, it gives a lot of sun today," Like, that's such a Dutchy thing to say. And my kids get it. And they're like, oh, like, that's what this is. I totally get that. And it's so nice when I don't have to really explain like how that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's so funny that you mentioned that specific phrase because where I teach, I am not in the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country, and I try to make those connections because that's that's the English that I grew up with as well. Oh, it gives a lot of rain today, or something like that, and I'll say that, and my kids just look back at me like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like, "I'm speaking English," and they're like, "Nobody says that." And I was like, but they do, just not here where you live. But yeah, it's fun to be able to do that for sure.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I mean, the kids that you have in the classroom, they do they find Pennsylvania Dutch interesting?
Yes. Yes. I mean, not all of them do. Some of them, yes, but yeah, I've done. So we have this period at the end of our day. So I mentioned we have block scheduling. So we have 4 classes. They're roughly like an hour and a half long, give or take. And then the end of the day, we have a half-hour period. And past couple of years, we've been using it for what we call PLT. It stands for personal learning time. And each teacher, like every day, I run a different session in my room. Where kids like we have like an online thing where they can kind of sign up and schedule themselves, and then they show up to your room that day for whatever you're doing. And I've been doing like a PA Dutch 101 for the last couple of years. It's slowed down a little bit since COVID. I don't get as many kids, but Doug, we watch your videos.
Yay!
We watch your videos. Maybe I'll teach them some words if there's something significant coming up. Maybe I'll loop it in there. We do a lot of Pennsylvania German stuff in German Club.
Oh, please tell the audience about what you do with the your version. I love this. Your version of Elf on the Shelf in your classroom, because this is brilliant. I think this is absolutely brilliant.
So I have this little this little Belschnickel figurine, and should I explain who Belschnickel is?
You can, yeah. And for anybody that's out there, I'm sure everybody listening to this is familiar with the Elf on the Shelf concept that this, this thing everybody does at Christmas. So this is Ashley's version of this in her classroom.
So the Belschnickel is like I guess you could kind of think of him as the Pennsylvania German version of like Santa Claus, but I mean he's not like all smiles and rainbows and whatever. He's kind of a scary looking guy. He's dirty. The idea is that, he scares your kids into being good. So if your kids are good, I mean, he seems like a fair guy. He'll reward them. But if they've been bad, you might get hit with a few sticks or something. But I have this little Belschnickel figurine, and actually it's a gift from a former student. They found it at some kind of craft fair or something. Like first couple of years of teaching, I've had it ever since. And when I finally got my own classroom, I started part-time for a very long time and had to build the program up. And so when I got a classroom, I was like, oh, I'm so using this to our advantage. I started this Belschnickel Elf on the Shelf type thing. So he hides throughout the room and just like creeps from different places. Sometimes there's a note about how the kids are misbehaving. I have a couple other, I guess what I call mascots. They're like just little stuffed bears. I have one from the American Association of Teachers of German, Hannah, the Teach German Day bear. And then I have another bear who just wears lederhosen, and his name is Helmut. He's named after one of Frau Gerhardt's bears. He was a big guy, but they look the same. So he's Helmut. And sometimes he does things with them. I've taken pictures of him playing Dutch Blitz with Helmut and Hannah. I've seen him hold Helmut by his hat from the projector screen, all kinds of things.
I know Christmas is coming when my social media feed starts filling up with these daily photos from your classroom, and I always thoroughly enjoy seeing how creative you've been, because I mean it's tough. You got to come up with X amount of days of different things to do with this Belschnickel, and it's so you're connecting something that all these kids are familiar with from their own personal homes and their own personal lives, but you're then taking this cultural aspect unique to the Pennsylvania Dutch and making all of these different connections, but then also adding this element of fun and it's teachable and they don't know they're learning.
Oh
I
my
think
gosh,
that's
they
what's
love it. It's so funny. I have kids who come in and the first thing they drop their stuff and they're like, "Where is he?" And they look everywhere. And I love when I find a great hiding place and it takes them a few minutes. It's so fun.
that's awesome.
But
It is truly
and
awesome.
they'll take pictures and post where he is. Like it's becoming a thing. And I love it. It's so much fun. So I'm really glad.
It is awesome. It is. I truly mean it when I say, like, those mornings I love waking up and scrolling through my Facebook feed or Instagram and seeing Ashley's Belschnickel hiding somewhere in her classroom. I always thoroughly enjoy that. I want to keep on this. Well, a couple more questions about teaching right now in our current era that we are in.
Yeah.
Do you find that kids are excited, or maybe excited is not the right word, but are truly interested in languages these days?
I yeah, I don't think the interest has changed. Um, I think I think a lot of other things have changed. It's definitely become a bit more challenging, probably to teach anything. I don't even think it's just language. I think it's hard to get the students motivated if they're not already like kind of geeking out over the language. Homework is kind of difficult and I don't give out a lot. I like to do things in class. I like to be available even if they're working on their own and trying things on their own. And also, provide more interactive practice when I can. So I don't do that too much, but when I do, oh, I don't get a lot of it back. So that's kind of hard. But I think that's a trend across the board. I talk to my colleagues about it, and um, I just that's only just a piece of it. And I've also noticed, especially this year, because it's the first so far full school year that we've been back to school like normally. No online days, no weird hybrid schedule. Like everybody's back. Um, a lot of our students, especially the younger ones, like have to learn how to be students again. Just the like procedural things, or knowing, like, I don't know, just knowing like when to not interrupt when you're in the middle of something, or um I think sometimes like they just, I don't know, they get distracted so easily. Cell phones have become a bigger problem. I mean, they were always kind of an issue with some students, but it's worse this year. I think they forget that like you need to like be paying attention and that when you pay attention, you have a better chance to do better because you know what's going on and all that.
you
Um,
have you have articulated something that has, I mean, it is exactly what anyone that's not working in public ed right or in education right now really doesn't understand this. But you're right. I see the same thing. I have to, like, kids have to learn or relearn how to be students again. And that sounds so crazy probably to anybody that's not in our field. Oh, well, they were only out of school for a year, or maybe in some cases, depending where they lived, maybe they were only virtual for 6 months or something, and they weren't virtual for the whole year. But it is crazy how much, no matter how long they were off from the normal schedule or the normal school setting situation, how they completely like deprogrammed. And one of the things that I struggle with the most is exactly what you just said, getting them to understand, like, hey, you can't just interrupt someone else's conversation. Hey, like, oh, there's so many things I can't even say them all right now. And it's all what you would consider like soft skills, like things that
yeah,
as a normal functioning human being, you would pick up on these clues. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be talking right now. Oh, but I am. Or maybe I shouldn't be doing X, but I am. And you have to, and you're reprogramming 16-year-olds where normally, you and I've been teaching for long, when by the time they get to the high school, those kids understand what school is, and here's what a school day looks like. This is what is expected of me or how I should behave. But that COVID jolt just totally took that. I don't understand it, and flipped all these kids. It's unbelievable. And there's probably a lot of reasons. Maybe it's even more than COVID. And it's just the generations of kids that we're teaching. But you're exactly right. Like, I struggle with those things so much. I'm thinking to myself, why don't these kids know how to do some of this stuff? And it's like, you're 16 years old. Come on, for Pete's sakes. But they don't. I
right.
don't
And
know.
I also notice, I mean, they missed so much. Like instructionally over that time, I didn't notice it so much at first, which is weird. You think I would have, and I don't know if this is the case for you too, but I'm noticing it more now. Um, just with certain things, or especially, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. They really got the raw end of the deal. But I would say like my upper level kids, the kids who have been studying German, like they just whatever they learned before, they don't know it. They don't know it. And it's not, I don't think it's their fault. Like these are kids, like I said, they're upper level. These are kids who are choosing to learn German and like it and want to learn it. They have the motivation. Just stuff got lost, or because it was not a traditional setting, especially for a language, you need to practice speaking it with each other. That's really hard to do on a Zoom with like 25 other people in it. And yeah, that's really difficult, and I'm noticing it a lot right now, especially with them. That being said, they're rocking it. Like, we're rebuilding the things that we lost, and they're doing really well. And I have to give them credit for that, but they've been really struggling.
I can echo everything you said. I can echo everything you said. So you're not alone in that struggle. Trust me. All right, I want to circle back to this Pennsylvania Dutch stuff, and I'm going to start with this statement. I love going to Pennsylvania Dutch events when you're there because it doesn't make me the youngest person in the room. So I have to ask you some questions. And you're when you at the beginning of our interview when you talked about this, I've been told I'm an old soul. As soon as you
Yeah.
said that, I thought to myself, the little bit that I know Ashley, that hits. That is somewhat accurate in my opinion. So I want to ask you a couple things. Okay. So you already mentioned you had this great grandmother, and that was kind of like your Pennsylvania Dutch experience growing up.
Yeah.
So at some point in your life, you decided this is something I do want to invest time in and effort, and you learned the language, or you learned some of the language, and you're continually learning the language, but you also got yourself involved in other things outside of that. You sang with a choir that does traditional Pennsylvania Dutch music. You go to these events, whether it's for Sumlings or the folk festival. You've entered the writers contest at the Kutztown Folk Festival in the past. Why do you do that stuff?
It's fun. Why would I not? That's the easy answer. It kind of, I have to circle back to sort of what I was trying to get out before. I feel like when I learned these things, I already knew that I had this heritage, but I never really experienced. I feel like in learning it, my view of how Pennsylvania Dutch I am has kind of changed. And it's funny, I think that might be the first thing I wrote about for the Schrijver Fest, for the Writers Fest. Um, but, it wasn't like I come from Pennsylvania Dutch people, or my great grandmother was Pennsylvania Dutch, or whatever. It's now I am Pennsylvania Dutch. I am an active participant, and it changes everything. Like it's not just part of my heritage, but now like this is me, this is who I am. So I feel like I kind of found myself in a way, because I knew it was always part of me, but I think I don't know how else to explain that.
Yeah, because I guess my follow-up question would be, well, A, you almost brought tears to my eyes when you said that, but um, what was there a light bulb moment? Was there something that happened that that created this epiphany that made you say, I don't come from these people, I am these people? What was there just one thing, or was it just this that was the culmination of this journey that you've been on?
Yeah, I think it was just the culmination of it. I don't think there was any just one like aha moment where I was like, oh hey. Um, I kept doing more in the community because I was enjoying it, and I wanted to learn more and meet more people. And it's awesome. Like all these people I've met, you and Patrick and everybody in the singer corps, and it's like having like a huge extended family. That's what it feels like. And it's amazing. But yeah, somehow over the course of me saying, I want to take this class because it's being offered at Kutztown and it's part of my heritage, somehow between that and now, it's become my identity and not just my history. It's
but at some point, I have to ask you this. This takes a certain kind of personality because not every 20-something-year-old is going to say, I'm going to go start singing with this group of 70-year-old people. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that, for some people, that's a non-starter or a very intimidating environment, maybe. Well, what do you think it is about you that made you say, no, this isn't an issue at all. I want to go do that with those people.
Well, I have to give you a little bit of background here. So at my home church, in Wernersville, and I'm still a member there. I'm still a member of the choir there. I've been singing in the choirs at that church since I was 5 years old and just never stopped. So when I graduated high school, we did have like a senior high choir for like high school age students. And most people like, graduate and go away to school. So they're not around. I stayed around. I only went to school in Kutztown and I commuted to just kind of save some money and whatever. So I was still going to church. And I actually, well, first I spent an extra year in that choir because they lost a lot of us in my graduation year and needed some extra voices. So I did that. But then afterwards, I didn't want to stop. Like it's something that's been part of my whole life. So I joined the adult choir and was very easily the youngest person there. And I kind of still am. But these were people I had known my entire life. So it was a little weird, but I knew everybody. And so I think being used to, I guess, the age gap or whatever with them just made it very easy. I wasn't intimidated. I didn't feel awkward or anything when they asked me to sing with the singer corps. I had a blast.
That's awesome. Okay, so here's something that I struggle with as a younger person that is constantly at these types of events, and the average age of the room is 82 years old. And here I am. And even though I got a little gray in my beard, I'm still a lot younger than 82 years old. This is something I've talked to my wife about a lot, and I want to get your opinion on it. Have you ever been at one of these events and you look around the room and you say to yourself, my gosh, I'm the youngest person here. And what I struggle with is I look around the room at whatever event I'm at, and I see all of these, gray heads, and I lament, and maybe I just get too melancholy, and I say to myself, I get home from these events, and I'll say to my wife, well, I was at an event again tonight where I saw my culture, my language, my people physically dying, because you're in a room where these people are at the end of in the last portion of their lives. And you're not looking around, you're not seeing kids running around, and you're not seeing, 20 somethings in the corner. You're seeing 80 somethings. Have you ever had that moment where you were at one of these Pennsylvania Dutch events and you looked around and had that kind of like melancholy, sad moment, or not? Hopefully not, but I've had those, and it's something that I kind of like wrestle with from time to time.
No, I've definitely had those feelings and those thoughts. Maybe not every time. Like I definitely enjoy myself at all these events and I have so much fun and it's great. But I do think of that sometimes and I feel like this is where I want to do more. I remind myself, okay, but you're an active participant and I know I'm not the only one. Like you're a very active, way more active participant. Like I wish I could do more, to be honest with you. I feel like I'm not doing enough. Just participation even in certain things, but no, maybe that's not even an accurate thing, but sometimes it feels that way. I think when I feel that sad feeling at certain events, I kind of think that to myself, like, oh, you should really do more. um I don't know, but yeah, I do think that sometimes, and I just it makes me more driven to be involved in the things I'm involved in, at least. It makes me more driven to share these things with my students when I get chances to do it. And by the way, I have some kids coming to the Berks County Versammlung next month. I'm so excited.
I was gonna ask you. So everyone that's not familiar, every year the Monday after Easter, is the Berks County Pennsylvania Dutch Versammlung, and this is like the 82nd or 83rd one that'll be coming up here in April, and that's an event where you look around the room and it's all old it's all old Dutchies. But there have been the last couple of years before COVID, you started doing this where you were bringing a group of your high school students, and I thought I was there the one night and I didn't know you were doing this, and you walked in and walked like, I don't know, 10, 11 16, 17-year-olds, I had to have had the biggest smile on my face because, and one of the things was I was watching the room and you saw all of these older Pennsylvania Dutch people turn and look and say, and you could see on their faces that there's young people here and they're interested in our story. And you have to keep doing that. I mean, you might not think it's a big of a deal, but it is a huge deal, I think, for them to be there. And they could leave the night, and all they might think is, well, I had a good meal. I didn't understand too much, but I had a good meal. But the fact of the matter is that you're exposing them to something that is so culturally specific to their region of the world, and for some of them, their culture and their heritage, of course, and these are things that 20 years from now, God forbid, might not be around, or at least not in the form that they are today. And I think it's so important that you keep doing that. And you might say, I'm not that active, but you're the only person doing something like that, Ashley. And there are other things that you do, like that Belschnickel thing. As small as that sounds, that is a huge thing. I truly believe that. And it's the little things like that that create learners that take that and then share that with their friends, or when they grow up and have their families of their own, they're sharing that tradition with their children. And now, because of what you did in your classroom, you have passed something on to 2 more generations. And it might sound as silly as hiding a doll around your classroom, but you've passed on a cultural tradition unique to at least 2 more generations. And that's powerful. That is really, really powerful. So don't think that, don't be hard on yourself when you think I should be doing more. I'm not going to tell you not to do more, of course, but at the same time, you are doing really important work. Really important.
Well, you almost just brought tears to my eyes now, so thank you. But yeah, I think sometimes it's hard to think that far ahead, the impacts that, like you said, the little things will do. And I mean, that's why I do it. That's why I bring the kids, because I know, here's a taste of Pennsylvania German culture. It's not just a taste of whatever's on the menu for food, although it's very good. So there's at least that, if nothing else. But yeah, I find it surprising sometimes the kids, they haven't really been exposed to much Pennsylvania German, but they go to these events and they come back and they're like, oh, well, I kind of understood like what this guy said about this, or they'll at least get some bits and pieces. Sometimes I'm thankful they don't understand everything, because sometimes the jokes get a little, um, get to be a little much, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness no one got it. I'm not going to tell them what they said.
Well, no, it is awesome. So I'm going to ask you, and I've asked a lot of people this question. I want your opinion. Look into your
Okay.
crystal ball. Look into your magic crystal ball. Where do you see our language and culture 20 years from now?
I don't know. I don't have the answers. I do see it still, like, it'll look different. Like you said, it'll look different. Maybe we won't have those events, or the events will be different. I think you and I will definitely still be there.
I sure
That's for
hope so.
sure. Um, but I think, I'm thinking of just a whole bunch of people. I feel like there are a lot of people in our generation who are involved in this, and maybe we don't see each other at every single event or every single thing, but we're there and we care about it, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing and then some, to kind of keep our culture alive and share it with the next generation. So I don't, if you ask, I hate to say this is probably not everybody, but I feel like if you ask an older person this, they're not going to have such a positive outlook. But maybe because their experience is different. Um, I think we're going to see a lot more people like me, maybe, who know about it, but learned about it as they were growing up, or later in life, and sort of found a calling or a niche in it, um, and find their passion for it. I think we're going to see a lot more Pennsylvania Dutch people learn it that way and be exposed to it that way. But it doesn't mean that it's going to die out or anything. So I refuse to go there. I'm not going to say anything about it dying. I think it's just going to look different. I mean, if you think back, it requires work and it requires love and, all of the things that have been part of our language and our culture and our people since forever. But if you look back in time, when I was learning the language and some of the history behind it, they were so worried about this so long ago. And look at us now. It's still here. So I feel like we can defy the odds. So what? It's just going to be different.
Our people have been defying the odds for 300 years in this country. And I think you're absolutely right. And we have to be the cheerleaders that our grandparents' generation didn't feel comfortable being.
Yes.
And in the world that we're in today, with the technology that we have, it's really easy to do that. Which probably seemed insurmountable or, beyond something possible to our grandparents. Now we can do that. And you're right. I agree with you 100%. I am with you in the camp of, it's not going to be dead. It's just going to be different. It's going to be different. And it's not going anywhere. As long as I'm breathing and as long as you're breathing and other bunch of, we're not going to let it go anywhere. So,
We're too stubborn. Pennsylvania Dutch people were way too stubborn for that. We're not going to just let it go. Are you kidding me?
You got that right.
No, that's not happening.
Ashley, this has been absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to talk to you about things I've always wanted to talk to you about, never just had the opportunity to. But we end every episode with 10 quick questions that I ask all of my interviewees. So the question is, are you ready for your 10 questions?
I think so.
Yes,
we'll see.
You're ready. All right, here we go. Question number 1. What is your morning drink of choice?
Oh, coffee for sure.
How do you take your coffee?
I'm not that picky, so I can drink it black, but if I don't drink it black, there needs to be creamer in it.
Tell the audience how much the Germans love to drink coffee.
Oh, I feel like that all we drank was if it wasn't beer, it was coffee.
That has been my continued experience with Germans as well.
For breakfast, in the afternoon, you had your Kaffee and Kuchen, your English coffee and cake.
Yeah.
I hate when that happens. And all the time.
So you are a musical person, so I'm really curious about this next question. Who is a go-to musical artist or group for you?
Oh, I even thought about this, and I don't have a clear answer for you. Yeah, I cheated because I've listened to your
fine. Well, I'm glad you do.
But yeah, I don't know. It just depends on my mood.
I get that. I totally get that. I'm the same way, but is there one or two artists that you really like?
I gravitate towards country, but again, it depends on my mood. Lately, I've been preferring more classic country. Oh, I'm a big fan of George Strait, especially the older it is, the better. It's so good.
3 chords and the truth is old country, right? I've heard that many times from different people. Great choice. All right, number 3. What movie can you watch over and over again and it never gets old?
Oh, don't judge me for this. Pride and Prejudice. I just love it.
Why would I judge you for that answer?
I don't know.
When you said that,
it's so mushy.
Mushy's okay. Come on.
But that's why I love it.
There you go. Story. It is a great story. It's lasted a long time and it's been retold how many times? So that there's something there that's of value. 100%. No, I'm with you on that. It's a great film. All right, number 4. What is the last thing that you read?
Oh, I don't know the last thing I've actually finished reading. I'm reading 2 books right now. One of them, and I don't even remember, I think it's called It's Not You, It's Me. It was just one of those free, cheesy romance novels you get on Apple Books. I'm reading that. It's pretty good. It's not bad for a cheesy, cheap novel. The other book that I'm finishing up, I have to look it up, and I forgot that I wanted to do this. So sorry it's not quick, but but this one is so cool, and I feel like you would probably be interested in this if you haven't already heard of it. It's called Never I Shall Forget These Human People. And the wording of that's why I couldn't remember it. It's by Roger Rank, and you can get it at Masthoff Press. And it's a great story. It's about Roger, his father, I believe, worked at basically the Reading Airport, but during World War II. And during that time, they housed and kind of put to work some prisoners of war. And he got to meet some German men who were prisoners of war, and they became great friends. And after they went back to Germany, they wrote letters back and forth. Roger, or not Roger, I'm sorry, the whoever his father is, can't remember his name offhand. He Roy it was. He sent packages, like care packages over, and it's just, oh, it's so interesting, not just from like that perspective, but if you take into account the history of the time, one of his friends lived in what became East Germany. One of his friends, a couple of his friends were in the West, and there was only one of them that he really stayed in contact with like his entire life. And it's just incredible to read this. So the author, gives you a historical background, but tells you what was happening in the letters to see what was going on in their lives, how these German men were taking what was happening in their homeland, depending on where they were at the time. But then also just the ties back to Berks County are actually really cool. Yeah. And all of the letters are there. So I'm just finishing the letters in the back of the book, and it's so good.
That does sound like an awesome story. Yeah, I'll have to look that up for sure. I'll give Masthof my money. They get a lot of my money.
That place is dangerous for me.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. All right. What's your favorite pizza topping?
Mushrooms.
Yay! That's the right answer. Yay! Laying on the beach or going for a hike?
Oh, I like both. Can't I do both in the same day?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. You got it. All right. You have invited me over for dinner. What are you making?
Oh, probably something really Dutchy. Maybe a good hearty chicken pot pie from scratch or something like that.
Do you like to cook?
It's okay. I'm not the biggest fan, but it depends. It depends on what it is and how much time I have. If it's a work day, then if it's quick and easy, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
But, something like that, I take my time for that. So we'd have to like have dinner on like a weekend evening or something.
Sounds good. What is a dream vacation destination of yours?
Oh, there are so many places, but I do have to say, I'm going to say Switzerland actually, because I have not been there yet, and I do have some genealogical ties to some places there that I just need to set foot in. Like I need to be there. But of course, there are so many places in Germany I haven't visited yet, and elsewhere. But a lot of it is just me looking for where my family came from and trying to visit those places because it's the coolest feeling.
It is. I've tried to impress. I've been lucky enough to be able to step foot into the towns where some of my forefathers left from, and there's an eerie aspect to it, but there's also a very I don't know. It's a unique.
Like you're coming home. It feels like home. Like
it really does. Some of the towns that I went into, I didn't necessarily get as strong of a connection, but then there were some that, for whatever reason, I really did. In German, there's this word gemütlich. I mean, you're familiar with it, and
yes.
And it doesn't. It's a hard word to translate. It's like this sense, this feeling of yeah, I don't know.
It's like a warm hug.
It's gemütlich is like a warm hug. That feeling.
Yeah.
And there were some towns where my forefathers came from that I was lucky enough to visit, where I felt that warm hug out of nowhere. Like, I don't know if it was emotions or whatever it was, but whatever it was.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one. But yeah, it's such a magical feeling. It's so cool.
So, I'll share one quick story, and I think the listeners will enjoy this too. So I have this exchange program with a German high school in Germany, and before COVID we would go every other year. Germans would come here for 10 days and spend time at our high school, and then I would take American students over for 10 days to Germany. And one of our security officers in my high school was really big into genealogy, and he was getting close to retirement age, and he said, "It's my dream to go to Germany and go to this town where my great-great-great-grandfather came from." And I said, "Well, where is that?" And we're looking on a map, and we find it, and here it's this tiny little town, literally 20 minutes from where our partner school is. And I said, "Roy, the next time I go, come along." He goes, "Oh, I've never been to Europe. I'm afraid." I said, "Look, you'll be with me. I will be your friend. I will be your guide. Don't worry. You'll stay with me. We're going to be great." And on one of the days we're off, you and I will go to this town and we'll go there. I promise you. So he saved money up and he went with us that year. And on the weekends, the kids were with their host families and it was like family weekends. They could take the kids and do whatever they wanted with it. So I really had very little responsibilities on these weekends. And I was saying to our German friends that we live with over there, I said, can we please take a side trip to this tiny little town? They didn't even know where it was. We had to look it up on a map for them. It's a really tiny little crossroads town.
That's funny.
They said, yeah, let's go. So we go down there and we get to this town and it's literally, I don't know, 30 houses and a little church and that's it. And this little stream flows through it. And I'll get teared up saying this story. We get out of the car and we're walking through these streets and Roy like just started walking ahead of me. And I was like, I'll give this guy some space, you know. And he walks down to the stream and he's looking at everything and he picks up this little stone. And I said, you know, what do you think, man? How crazy is this, right? You know, and he's like, these streets your ninth great grandfather walked and all this stuff. And he held the stone out to him and he says, this is never leaving my pocket. And he put it in his pocket and he goes, I always have this little piece of my hometown that he said in his pocket. And I was just like 9 generations removed, you know, just the craziness of that power and that pull. So the three of us aren't alone. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that maybe have stories like that. But whenever I think of that story and we think about place and our connection to the earth, whether it's here in the United States or our immigrant home, wherever we came from, it's powerful, extremely powerful. Yeah. Well, okay. Sorry.
I know.
It's such a great story. All right. What's something you're afraid of?
I don't know.
Do you have like any of those, like, you know, like spiders or snakes or anything like that?
Oh yeah, spiders is definitely one of them.
Are you a person that'll scream when you see a spider?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was just talking. I was at my parents' house last weekend, and I don't remember why on earth we were even talking about spiders, but somebody was there. My brother's girlfriend was there, and we know each other pretty well, but like not that well quite yet. And they were telling her how I scream, like even if I don't like to kill them either, but I also am like, please get out of my living space. Like, so sometimes I feel like I have to. But I scream the entire time I'm doing it. And I still do it even here, like. You know, I live on my own, but there's no one here to hear me, and I still do it.
That's awesome. That's perfect. It's perfectly rational. I have no problems with it, Ashley. All right, last question. What job, other than one that you've had in your past, would you love to have?
Oh, I need to be like a professional genealogist. That's it. Maybe a traveling one, because that would
that'd be awesome too. Yeah.
And I could go to all these international places for, you know, my American clients. And
boy, that would be the job, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Holy cow. Yeah. You figure out a way to make a living out of that, let me know, because I might be interested. Maybe we'll open our own company, something like that.
I'm down. We could do that.
Sounds good. Ashley, it has been an absolute joy being able to finally talk to you about some things I've been meaning to ask you for years, literally years. Oh man, you made me smile and you made me laugh, and you also brought a tear to my eye. It's the perfect conversation, right? We went full circle and we ended with some laughs anyway, so it's perfect.
Thank you for having me.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much, Ashley, and I look forward to talking to you again in the near future.
All right, sounds great.
Thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. 5 stars only, please. Follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just look for Doug's Front Porch. Also, please feel free to tell all of your friends about the show, and I'll see you all next time on my front porch.